Hello guys, what is going on, and welcome back to another weekly book review. Today, going to be reviewing Station 11. Got a lot to talk about in this one. So to start off with, as usual, we're going over the blurb. One snowy night in Toronto, famous actor Arthur Leander dies on stage whilst performing the role of a lifetime. That same evening, a deadly virus touches down on North America. The world would never be the same again. 20 years later, Kristen, an actress in the Travelling Symphony, performs Shakespeare in the settlements that have grown up since the collapse. But then her newly hopeful world is threatened. If civilization was lost, what would you preserve? And how far would you go to preserve it? To start off with, that description is much more dramatic than the book itself. This book is like a plethora of just like misadvertisements. I can't think of the right word. But false advertising, there we go. It's like it feels like a book. The outer shell is not, it doesn't represent at all what the book is about. So firstly, what I'd like to say is that it's a dystopia novel. I mean, well, that's what it's masqueraded as. It's like a plain dystopia novel, like most of the books I read, because I'm very into sci-fi. Should take my glasses off because you can't see my eyes, which is a bit weird. But yeah, so Station 11, like a normal dystopia novel, like I'm reading The Maze Runner and stuff. I read Lord of the Flies, which is a dystopia. And I'm going to try and read different books because I don't want this to just be a main sci-fi like type of series. I want it to be like a bunch of different books so people can pick and choose which ones they want to watch. But yeah, Station 11 is a dystopia, but now I'm going to talk about why it isn't really a dystopia. So this book didn't need to be 333 pages like it was. It was padded out a lot with the dystopia tropes, like talking about, oh, there's no electricity, it's hard to get food. It's talking about what life was like afterwards, how children that were born after the event like grew up like not knowing anything and stuff like that, which is only really relevant to one of the characters, but it's more than half of the book. And this book is like, it focuses primarily on around about 5 characters. Well, 4 characters. I mean, the first character that was introduced, they talk about, and then he has like 2 other chapters in like a 55 chapter book. So it's really 4 main characters, and like the whole like dystopia part of the book is only really relevant to one of the characters. So it's kind of weird that that was so much of the book, and it really felt like padding. Even though it was done really well, it felt so much like filler. Yeah. So there's 2 things that this book is really about. The first one being Station 11, a comic made by one of the characters in the book, that sort of brings it's what links every single character in the story together. This one comic, Station 11, and that's sort of the story behind the dystopia, but there's a story behind the story behind dystopia, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But yeah, so every single character that's like a main character in the book has this strong connection to this comic, that has strong connections to other characters, and the main character, Arthur Leander, I think that's how you pronounce it. He is the guy that pretty much just distributes this comic among a few certain people, and then 20 years later, where this book ends, it's like, oh, all these lives that have like sort of been influenced by this comic have all come full circle and come back together, and also like have been influenced by each other in ways they can't imagine, and also they've been interacting without really knowing either. This sort of links to the overall theme as well, which is that like everything has a plan, everything has its place, which is forced down your throat like quite a lot, which I thought a bit annoying, but it's done in a way that shows a bunch of different perspectives. It's shown like a logical way, like near the end it was like, oh yeah, it was so coincidental this happened, and then like it backtracks a sentence later and he goes, oh, it wasn't really coincidental, like this was going to happen anyway because we discussed it like a week earlier, you know, that sort of thing, where the author clearly knows that them 2 perspectives can really be against each other, but when the same person uses them 2 perspectives, it's like, oh, I can think logically about this. While there's other like perspectives, like the crackpot's perspective, like, oh my god, like God has a plan, this is why this plague happened, he's picked us, like we are the divine in people and we'll repopulate the earth, and like crazy stuff like that. and then there's also people that have none of it, and there's people in between, people who use it as comfort, people who like despise it, you know, that sort of stuff. And that's one of the main themes of like this whole book. Finally, I'd like to talk about the sort of thing that really struck a chord with me in the end. Like it only really resonated with me towards the last like 20 pages of the book. Arthur Linder, I swear that's how you pronounce his last name, I'm not too sure. It's really how Station 11 connects with him, the comic. It's him attempting to fix his life. To like, there's a character in this book that's sort of close to him, where her like not really catchphrase, but her motto, that's the right word. Her motto is "I repent nothing," and he says to himself, "I repent everything." And so, in his last two attempts to sort of like help like get back on the right track, well, he doesn't know it's his last two attempts because he's the first character to die in this book. And that's another thing that's really sad, but I'll talk about in a minute, is like his last two things to do was to give a comic to his son that he has barely seen and that has now lives in a different country to him, and give one to a girl, Kristen, who's also a character in the book, that is sort of like a stand-in for his son. Like, she's a child actress that works on the same play that he does before he dies, and he sort of like treats her as like a pseudo daughter, a pseudo child of his, because of how much he is reeling from the fact that he can't spend time with his son. And the fact that he starts this journey of like self-improvement and trying to right the wrongs like a week before he dies, and he only scratches the surface of what he can do. That's what really struck a chord with me. I'm like, that he was older, he was getting on a bit, but that's where his life that he wanted to live started, and it got taken away from him a week later. That's the main thing that I took from this book, and it happened in the last 20 pages. And I feel like if a book can do that in 20 pages, it's really good. So literally the only downside, apart from the slight filler that I thought wasn't really filler, but you know, that's just my thing, is that it suffered a tiny bit at the beginning from bad pacing. This book, I read 90% of it in the last 3 days, and the first 10%, it took me almost a week to read because it was just very, very slow. One or two chapters was about like 20 pages long, when like in a 55 chapter book in like a 300 pages, that's like way above the average. Most chapters were around like 7 or 8 pages maximum, and when they are really long and they stick to one specific character or one specific group of characters, when there's a bunch of different characters and a bunch of different timelines, it can really slow things down, especially once you've gotten used to that sort of like, oh, we're going to spend time with different characters and different settings. And when it's just one setting and one set of characters, it just really slows things down for me, and that was the only real downside. So, in this series, when I recommend books, I never want it to lose value. I never want it to be like every other week I'm saying this book is amazing, you should buy this book, you should get it, because then it loses all its value. It's like, oh, it's just like another alright book that you're saying buy. No, this book, I rate books out of 20. You haven't seen my rating list, but I'm probably going to show it in a video at some point. But I rate every book that I get, and I rate everything out of 20. I usually don't give ratings because they're kind of arbitrary. But out of 20, I'd say this book is a solid 17 or 18. So like a 9 out of 10. This is one of the few books that I'm going to say is a must-read, at least in the first half of this year. I'm going to say it's a definite must-read just because of how much it resonates. And just the message that it gives, and the way it uses a dystopia, which is such an overused genre in this day and age because of the Hunger Games, because of the Maze Runner. It's so overused, but it uses it to really bring out certain aspects in like a life that you wouldn't necessarily think about, and that's why I like it. The characters are perfect, and yeah, just I don't want to always recommend a book or say a book's amazing when it's alright, because so many book YouTubers do it. It's like, because they only do videos about books that they like, and they only read books that they know they're gonna like, and it just makes it so, oh, every book that they show is like, oh, you need to buy this. I'm like, well, one, I can't buy all them books. I don't have infinite money like you do. And two, it just loses all value. Your opinion doesn't matter as much as someone that would also show the bad as well as the good. And that's why I'm reading the Maze Runner series. Next week it's going to be Death Cure. And then after that, I don't know. I'm just going to get Death Cure because like I've been doing this as like a formula where I'll get the book, so I'll go get it anyway. So yeah, Death Cure. It's the final book in the Maze Runner series. Gonna be getting it. It's gonna be cool, I guess. But yeah, so Death Cure. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this episode. I think it was a bit weird. I mean, I'm tired as well. It's 12:30. I've been reading in the bath for like the last 60 pages for like an hour and a half. I'm a slow reader, I know. But yeah, so that's gonna be it. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully, enjoy the video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And I shall see you in the next one. Goodbye.